And we are back here to continue our journey to build a simple end-to-end ASP.NET Core plus Blazor application end-to-end from scratch. You know, if you've been following this series, I really highly recommend that you kind of go through and take notes of all the little components that we talked about last time. We initialized the SFEE core API, the test acceptance test, unit test, and then we did the infrastructure build. We wrote C# code that basically generated, you know, infrastructure code for us, and we're now able to kind of update that code and do whatever we want with it. This time we're going to start building a provision project, and bear with me on this one because this one is really important for you to understand how to actually provision services, ASP.NET Core or Blazor application services in C#. So what do you really want to do? Let me share here the black screen again. I think the last time we talked a little bit about an introduction, and this time we're going to talk a little bit about what components do we really need to get started, right? So just like everything in the world, you know, everything we've developed so far, you have brokers, right, that are sitting in your provision project. So your provision project looks a lot like an actual business logic project, but with a little bit of detail. So we have brokers in here, and we're going to add in services in front of this guy. So this is what I call services. These are foundation services. And then in front of this guy, we're going to add one service called the processing service right up here. So these are processing services, like here, processing services. And then at the very end, you have this program, this little thing called program CSS, which is basically the equivalent of a controller. We call it an exposer. And that's basically the entry point. Think of it as the entry point to this application, which is going to initiate this entire provisioning process end to end, right? So these stuff are going to communicate with each other, these components, and each one of them, just so you understand the map. And I'm going to mark each and every one of those on the map as completed as we go, as we develop them. We're going to mark each and every one of them as completed. Provision projects do not require unit tests. You know, that's a little bit, you know, too meta, you know, too kind of an overkill, because it's not really doing any business logic for us. What it's really doing is that it's going and saying, you know, I want to be able to simply just run a set of commands to be able to provision infrastructure components, right? So there's that part, but we're gonna, you know, take that slowly but surely and talk a little bit about where we're going with that stuff. Okay, so here's the deal. And what do we need in here? We basically need a bunch of brokers, and these brokers will help us build what we need to build an app service. Remember last time we talked about having a resource group, right? So we need a resource group. So that's my resource group here. And then inside that resource group, I want to build, and this is really important even to understand from a cloud infrastructure perspective. So this resource group is basically, think of it as an empty bag. It's just a bag that contains all your cloud components, right? And inside that bag, I'm going to put in all the toys, all the things that I really care about, you know, all the app service and database server and, you know, all of that. For starters, I'm going to put in an app service in here. I want to build a database server in here. I want to build a database in here, and I also want a plan. And this plan basically controls, you know, your ability to, you know, control the costs in your software. So now let me ask you this question. From a dependency standpoint, this guy needs to be provisioned while it's talking to a particular database server. So we should probably build, you know, each and every one of those first. We need the resource group first. And inside the resource group, I'm going to add the plan. And then with the plan, I'm going to add the database service and the app service. So these two can be created individually, but this has to go first. This guy here and this guy here have to go first. Does that make sense? What that basically means is that I need a bunch of brokers in here, just simple brokers. And each one of these brokers will take care of building a specific cloud infrastructure component for me. So I'm going to have, you know, cloud broker, resource group, broker, like this, resource groups for brokers. And I want to basically be able to build web apps, right? And I want to be able to build plans, you know, and then storages, you know, the database and the database server, right? All of this. And I also want to be able to, just so nobody can just access your cloud infrastructure, you need to be able to pass secrets in here. So only your pipeline is the one that's able to communicate with your cloud infrastructure and create provision and deprovision, these components. So let's just start with that. I'm going to go back into let's start with the resource groups out. We need to build the overall kind of storage broker, cloud broker. This guy here, let me pull that in here and just say cloud broker. It's just one guy that has multiple. This is my cloud broker here. And then inside that guy, we're going to build in all these other little, tiny components that we really care about. Okay, so let's just start with that. I'm going to go back into my project here. Before I jump into that, do you have any questions at all? No? Okay. Okay. So let me go here and create a new branch like this. And let me just type in users, Hassan, Habib, provision. Okay. And then in here, initialize project, right? So this is my provision project. And that's going to be really, the project itself is just a very simple program. It's just a console application that we're going to be kicking off from our service. I'm going to go here and say new project. Are you able to see this screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so there's a console app, and I'm going to call this app SFEE, right? SFEE.core.api dot provision dot infrastructure. Sure, dot provision.
Something, does it matter like how we spell SFEE? Somewhere is FIE, somewhere FEE.
I saw that someone, I think he's from Uzbekistan or something. Someone pointed that out to me. El Bake, thank you so much for pointing that out. I mean, we're gonna have to go and rename this one. And this one's gonna be so easy. Let's do it while we're at it before we start the new project, just so we can. So let me go back to master or main branch in here, and let me just go and say users. Let's do this. Users, Hassan, Habib, and then code drop, change Sophie to Sophie, like that. Let's do that real quick. It's really simple. You just go here and say, basically, I want to change this to Sophie like this, right? And now inside this guy, some people are going to be mad, right? Because you still have namespaces in here, maybe. No, actually not. That's pretty much it. Let's just build this guy and see. Rebuild. Here we go. Just as simple as that. So now if I go and say, let's do Control Shift F, just to search across the solution, and let's look for anything that is Sophie IE. Nope, it's gone, right? So that means in this solution here, the solution here is basically telling me something has changed in terms of, like, if you double click in here, it'll tell you I've changed my reference. Instead of targeting Sophie with the IE, now it's EE. Right, so now I can go here and just create that code rub real quick. So it's code rub, change project name to Sophie like this. Okay, so let's just go and kick that off. Let's jump really fast to the GitHub real quick and just merge that guy in. Here we go, GitHub. Here we go. And then there's Sophie core. Here's my pull request. And then I'm going to merge that pull request in. That's my code rub for the day. And now we have everything, basically. Oh, the folders haven't changed. See, I caught another one. So let's go back here. So just because you changed the project name, that doesn't mean that it's changing the folder name as well. So let me go and open up the folder for this guy. This is where it gets interesting, because Visual Studio now can give you that view of folders within projects. So let's just do that. Let's go into switch to folder view. Yeah, so that's my folder view now. And then can I see the folder where it's, there it is. See that folder here? I can go here and say Sophie. We used to do that from the outside back in the olden days, but not anymore. Now we can just do that, right? And now I can flip over to the solution. And let's see. So this guy now is not recognized because we need to basically re-add it in the solution, because now it's in a different directory. I can remove this guy like this, and then I can go back into the solution and just say add existing project. And I can go into, wow, this is further. Okay, hold on. Open File Explorer, SFEE core. Let me go back and add an existing project. Let's go here, and this is the infrastructure build and the CS proj. The CS proj should be somewhere here. I hope I didn't delete the project. Let's see. All project files, build. Oh yeah, this guy we don't need anymore, so this guy can go away. We don't care about this guy. But this guy here is the one we care about, so that's my build. So now I have this SFEE.core.api.infrastructure.build, and this guy is just brand new, no problem there. And now I can go and create another code drop where I go and say I completely deleted this directory, and I added a new directory under SFEE. So there's code drop, another code drop task, fix directory name for build project. Okay, so let's put that one in as well. I hope it pushes everything. This guy's still hanging. Let's see. Come on. Come on. Go in there. Stage. Okay. And then I think amend. Create and push. Pull and push. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's go back to GitHub and let's see if we can make this work. Hold on here. That's my guy. And then branches. Here's a new pull request. Code drop fix directory name for SFEE build project. Okay, so let's create this one here. Okay, here we go. So basically just changed all these directories. Now it's talking to all the right places, I think. Okay, cool. Let's merge that guy in. And then if I go into SFEE core, I should be able to see all of these changes, right? Someone asked me this the other day and said, okay, should we just, not do anything? No, just fix it, you're an engineer, you can fix anything you want, so it's still your project. Because I've seen this a lot. I've seen some people say, oh, well, we created the project and it's the wrong name, but it is what it is. No, don't do that, just go ahead and actually fix the details in here. That's really important. Okay, now we can go back to our actual mission here for today. So let's go back to the original branch, which is the provision project, this guy. Let's first make sure that we merge this branch with main, right? So in the package manager console here, I'm just going to go ahead and say git pull origin main. This guy is just going to require a reload for the project because we've changed the project name. So now I can look at this and it says SFEE build very nicely without any issues. Okay, now we're merged. Now let's start building our infrastructure project for the provisioning, right? So right click, add new project, right? If we can do the brokers today, we can continue with the services tomorrow. That's not a problem. But let's just start somewhere. So I'm going to go here and say, okay, this is my SFEE for API infrastructure structure, right? And then this guy is going to be provision like this. So this now is this guy. And then I don't really like the, the template that they have for the .NET 6, that namespace lists, whatever they're doing. So what I do is that I create it in .NET 5 template, and then I switch it back to .NET 6. This way I got the right template. And I know some people might not be happy with that, but that's okay. This makes a lot more sense to me at the moment in time. Maybe I'll change my mind in the future, who knows, right? Let's go here and add this program CS header in here. So that's my program CS. There's nothing here. It's just a very empty, there's nothing going on here. Now let's just start with the folders that we care about. So we need what? We need models and we need brokers. This is how everything starts. So it's models, brokers, services, it's processing, and then you go into, either coordination or orchestration, whatever you want to do. So these are my brokers here. Okay. So under brokers, there's clouds, right? So I want to go here and say, well, under here, I want clouds because I have a cloud broker. And under clouds, I want to build a cloud broker, just like how we build the storage broker, right? We build remember how we were building, you have a storage broker, and then under it, there are students, teachers, all of that kind of stuff. It's exactly the same thing. I'm going to go here and create a simple interface, like a contract. And I'm going to go here and say iCloud broker. That's this guy. It's public interface, partial interface, Control KE. This broker is the liaison. It's going to play the role of a liaison between us and the cloud infrastructure, Azure cloud infrastructure. And this here is my cloud broker right here. Right, and this guy's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to add this in here. I'm going to go and say public partial class, Control KE cleans up things. Okay, but the concrete class of this is a little bit more interesting, right? Because the concrete class of this, there are some requirements that we need to have in order for us to be able to communicate with Azure. Remember, broker's main responsibility is to allow us to kind of communicate with external SDKs, APIs, and wrap that up and protect your business logic from having to interact with these external resources. So we're going to need to install here a very simple library, and this library is called Azure Management Fluent. Azure Management Fluent. It's basically an SDK. Here it is, management.fluent. There it is. Azure Management, Microsoft.azure.management fluent. Microsoft.azure.management.fluent. I think that's what's it called. There it is. That's this guy. Right? So we need to pull this guy in so we can communicate with Azure through this API component, right? This library, unfortunately, it doesn't get a lot of love. There's a lot of things that can be done with this library. The last time this library was updated, no, actually, it's getting a little bit of work going on there. It has 7 million downloads, but there are things that are a little bit annoying, especially when it comes to building monitoring and stuff like that. It gets a little icky. Anyway, don't worry about that one now. We already installed this. Now, what do we need to be able to communicate with this client, right? So there's this client, and I want to work with this client to be able to build infrastructure components in the cloud. I need to authorize. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start like this. I'm going to start super simple. I'm going to go and say Azure authenticate Azure, right? So I'm basically authenticating against Azure. So I'm getting in the client that will help me kind of communicate with all of this. So I'm going to make this private here. It's my guy. I'm authenticating with Azure. Ideally, I want to return this guy. Why? Because this guy here, Sally, is the guy that allows me to go and provision and create resources. Like I can go here and say, app services, right? Or app gateways, web apps, .create or define, and then create, out of it, do the next thing with existing Linux plan or Windows plan, all of these awesome things. This little Azure, that's the entry point. This interface is my entry point to be able to build whatever I want in the cloud, okay? In order for that to happen, this guy needs to be instantiated, right? How do we instantiate this guy? There are things called credentials. Credentials is basically you allowing yourself, kind of telling this Azure thing, hey, I am familiar. I know how to, communicate. I have the secrets to be able to access your cloud infrastructure. I'm going to go here and call Azure Credentials Factory, and then from Service Principal, I can go down here and start building some fun things. Let me put this guy on the side, and let's see what this Service Principal wants from me. It has some requirements, right? The first thing it wants a client ID. And I'm going to put all of these as null for now, because I'm going to tell you where we're going to get these from. And it wants a client secret, and it wants a tenant, something called tenant ID, right? And it wants an environment. Where do you want to deploy? If you're building, so if you go in here and say Azure environment like this, there's multiple clouds like Azure German cloud, Azure China cloud, Azure global cloud, US government cloud. There are so many different, places where you can implement, but you need to have the right credentials, right? In our case here, we're just going to go with the global one. Go ahead. You have a question? Go ahead.
No.
Oh, you're good? Okay, perfect. So now I don't have to call this var anymore, because I know that this guy is returning Azure credentials. So let's just say Azure credentials, like this. That's what comes back from this guy. These credentials is what I'm going to be passing to the guy that creates these clients, the Azure client, so I can start building things in the cloud. Okay, so this is like you entering your username and password before you start doing something on an account. And then and then we're going to talk a little bit about where we're going to get these from. That's the interesting part about all of this. Okay, cool. So underneath this guy, I can now go here and say return, right? And I want to build this Azure. So I can go and say Azure dot configure like this. So this is my configuration. And I'm going to go and say with log level, HTTP logging, delegating basic. So if anything happens, please let me know what really is happening in my system. This configure, this with log level, I think is not mandatory, but it's important to kind of log what's going on with your system. And then I'm authenticating. See, this piece is like you logging in. I'm passing in the credentials here, right? And then underneath, I can go and say with default subscription. Of course, you can select a specific subscription with these credentials. Like if these credentials, like you can have multiple subscriptions in Azure. In here, we're just going to go and say the default subscription that this guy is working with. If you just understand this piece today, I am happy, but I want to kind of iterate with you and just, I want to finalize this piece at least before we start building the other pieces together, right? So again, I'm basically going and saying, I need a client ID, a client secret, a tenant ID, and an environment so I can access Azure. I can have access to the cloud and be able to communicate, with the cloud and be able to create things in it. And in here, I'm basically creating this client that's an iAzure or Azure that basically gives me this ability to start building components. This guy is the root of all evil. This is the this is the main source of everything, right? Because this is how we're going to build everything. This is the node. Think about this as a DB context or, whatever SDK you use to communicate with an external resource. Any questions about this piece?
So that's like the last part when you return the Azure configure.
Yeah.
So listen, like these with log level authenticate. So how do I know I should use those? Like
Documentation.
okay.
This is why mentoring and pairing, this very session that we have right now, it basically saves you hours and hours and hours of research, right? Because people, that's why mentoring is really important, because when you pair with people and you work with them, they will save you a lot of effort. A lot of people undermine schools and universities and all that, right? I have my own opinions about how they work today, but I think they can be done better, and I think they can save people a lot of time and research and all that. Okay, my friend, so you have this guy right here, but still, I don't have that guy exposed where I can use it. And where the heck am I supposed to get these three things from? Right? I want to know where I'm going to get these things from. So let's go up here and just define these as private fields, right? So private read only, right? And it's a string. So here's my client ID. This is private to this class. And then I'm going to go over here and say private read only. And here's client secret. Thanks to the thing, it's already writing the code for me. And then string, and then there is client tenant ID. Tenant ID. Right, but I really didn't put anything there yet. And then the last one, we're gonna add a couple more for databases later, but for now, I'm gonna go here and say Azure, and I'm gonna go here and say Azure. This is my access point.
Or you call it a client tenant ID instead of tenant ID. It's
this one.
Because right down, so you put it tenant ID. So.
Oh, tenant ID, yeah, sure, let's do that. Tenant ID, yeah, it's just a name. Yep.
Yeah. To be
okay. Now, where the heck are we supposed to get these values from? There are so many different ways we can get these values from. One way we can do it is to read it from environment variables in the pipeline setup. And that guy is not public necessarily. And I haven't done it I've done it a lot in ADO, Azure DevOps. And with you, I'm going to explore this through GitHub Actions, just to see how we're going to add these variables. Adding these variables should not be a big deal. And it's something very common. Let me actually, while we're on the topic, just for the people watching us and trying to explore this with us, Let me just show you, because there are standards that are common, things that are common, and there are things that are people introducing something new and we don't know what they're talking about. So if I go into the actions in here, there should be a place in here where we go and say, so status badge, and then there is, let's see here. Let's do this. GitHub add environment variables. There you go. GitHub docs, there you go. And then you can go here and basically create days of week, Monday, environment variable. So here's one guy. And then what we're going to do with this environment variable, so there's like a build step where you can add these environment variables. But more important than adding this environment variables, where are we going to get these variables from? We don't want to put our secrets out there on GitHub. Anybody could just pick up that secret and run with it, right? No, instead, we're going to be pulling that from something called Key Vault, right? Things are going to get really interesting and a little bit, tiny bit complicated. I'll show you every step of the way, and hopefully people will be happy to see how simplistic we can make this. So anyway, let's just go back here. So I'm defining those so I can use them down here on instantiation when I read those from an environment variable. An environment variable is something that's set up in the system that you're sitting in that you can access at any time from anywhere. What that basically means, like just to clarify things, let's say you're running Mac or Windows or whatever you're running right now, right? You can actually, let's say you have a bunch of services running in the same environment, in the same computer or the same server, right? You can go in this server and say, I want these three things to have the exact same variable without me having to define it again and again in every service. So if this is your environment in here, you know, what you're going to be setting up is something called an environment variable. Environment variable. And now any one of these guys can access that environment variable easily from anywhere, from any app in the world. See what I'm saying? So that's what an environment variable is. It's something that you're setting up there that anybody can have access to. And since we are running in a build kind of environment, we want to be able to kind of go and be able to access these environment variables. But how do we access the environment variables? We'll come to that part in a second. Let's first instantiate my cloud broker. Now, let's start with these guys. So this is my client ID like this. I can go here and type in environment. Oh, not Azure environment, environment like this. Like this. And I can go and say get environment variable. And I just kind of go here and say, you know, whatever the environment variable may be. Maybe it's called Azure Client ID. Something like that. Okay, or you can just call it the client ID, whatever you want to call it, right? The same thing happens with the rest. So what else do I have here? I have a client secret. I want the Azure client secret. Let's say you have here a tenant ID. Then I want the Azure tenant ID. So I instantiated all of these read-only parameters. Now I can easily just go and pass them down here. So the client ID is a client ID, and the client secret is a client secret, and the tenant ID is a tenant ID. Just like this. Now, since these variables in here are local private class members, I can just do this. This basically means this is a variable that's defined up here. But there's still something missing, right? There's still something missing. What's missing? What's missing here is that I still haven't instantiated this guy that's going to allow me to access Azure from anywhere in the world, right? I want to be able to go and create, you know, cloudbroker.app service, cloudbroker.SQL server, all of that good stuff. So how am I going to instantiate this guy? It's really sweet and simple. You can just go here and say Azure equal authenticate Azure, just like this, done. So you set up, you got all the data that you need to set up your environment variables, and now you're ready to go with accessing, you know, this information right here. Someone might say, oh, I can simplify this and move this down there and remove the private class member. Sure, if you want to do that, all power to you. Otherwise, this is just us basically telling the cloud, hey, it's us. You can trust us. We can build stuff in there in the cloud. If you just understand this piece, that's great for today. That's a great step to basically go there. Let me just kind of visualize things because I want to really understand this. I threw a lot of stuff at you today, and I want you to basically understand. So you have Azure, which is your cloud, right? And GitHub is running on its own local machine. So this is your provision project. We can't just have any project be able to access the cloud. This project needs to have permissions and credentials to be able to access Azure so it can build stuff in it, right? How is this provision going to happen? It goes into an environment like this. And inside this environment, there's a bunch of variables. These are environment vars, right? And these environment variables, when this guy is executing inside and in here, it basically tries to go and read these environment variables from here, and then it runs. So it actually runs the provision. So this is your infrastructure project, and this is the provisioning action that is being taken. And once this process is done, now it's going to be able to go and actually execute and run things in the cloud. So this is your instance that's running this guy. So this guy's coming all the way here like this and going all the way there. Because it's in this nice, secure environment, it's not too worried about being exposed from a security standpoint, because this is a hosted environment where it can access these secrets. Sometimes these secrets will go and pull even from the cloud, which is crazy part, but that's a story for another day. That's us to explore and kind of figure out together. That's really all that we've done. We just built that one piece that goes and says, read these environment variables, and now you have access to Azure.
I got it.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to this guy here. And let's just put a pin in that for today. So I'm just gonna go here and say, okay, so this is my guy. I'm gonna go here and say provision, initialize cloud broker. This is really all I've done. I'm just initializing the project. I'm not going to merge that yet because the provision project is huge. It takes a few steps, but it's really important. I really ask you to just kind of look through these videos and what we're saying here, because I'm saying a lot of stuff so fast. And the people that know what I'm talking about, they get bored. And the people that don't know what I'm talking about, they miss some of the stuff that I say, and then they say, oh, did you actually say that? Right? So that's one piece. By the way, just letting you heads up, some of these things will change still, but that's a story for another day.
Okay.
Okay, friend. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Sally, thank you so much for joining in today. Thank you everyone for watching us today. Make sure you kind of subscribe with us and jump in with us tomorrow so we can continue this journey of codifying, provisioning cloud infrastructure, in C#. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in another video. Thank you, Sally. Bye.
You have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye.